योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम्. As you probably remember, we are on the topic of Ishvara. How did this topic get introduced? The question was put, is there any other way by which asamprajñāta samadhi could be closest at hand, asannatamaha? And then the answer was given, Ishvara pranidhanat va. So by all, or by Ishvara pranidhana. Then the question was, who is this Ishvara? Ko ayam Ishvara. And that the answer to that was the sutra that we saw last time. Klesha karma vipaka shayehi aparamrishtaha purusha vishesha Ishvaraha iti. So we saw how is this Ishvara characterized, right? He is untouched by klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya. We saw what all four of these mean. Then it was a sort of a long commentary by Vyasa. There was a sort of a question as to what is the basis to say that there is an Ishvara, right? And there is a discussion around that. Then what is the difference between Ishvara and let's say Videhas and Prakritilayas and Mukta Purushas and so on. Liberated souls and Purusha, or Prakriti Layas, those who have been absorbed into Prakriti, and Ishvara. Right? So what is the difference? So that was also clarified by Vyasa's commentary. And then there was this logic presented which establishes that Ishvara's sort of Aishwaryam, the lordship or glory, is something that cannot be surpassed. And there is only one Ishvara. There aren't many Purushas of this type. Okay, and that was what was explained. And I think last time we saw the entire commentary, and we left where some of the material around this topic. Right? So some of the things I wanted to cover, part of which has already been covered, is just look at where the term Ishvara has come in some of the other texts like Bhagavad Gita and so on, just to get a more kind of a feel for what this term Ishvara refers to. And I think the other thing we said was, what is the etymology of the word Ishvara? That was, I think, covered. It was Ishte iti Ishvaraha. So Ish is again a verb root. The word Ishvara is formed through that from a suffix called Varach. So Ishte, so what is the meaning of the verb? Ish Aishwarye. Okay, so it's all about glory and lordship, the root of the verb. And the one who has that is Ishte iti Ishvaraha. So that was the word. And I think we also covered one shloka from Bhagavad Gita, which was Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san. So this is another example where in the Gita, the Lord is saying, I am the Ishvara of all the bhutas or all the beings. Okay? And in spite of being unborn, unchanging, right, and so on, prakritim swam adhisthaya, by wearing in some sense or adorning or commanding and so on, my prakriti sambhavami atma mayaya, I manifest through my own maya or magic or what. So that is one case where he is clearly saying Bhutanam Ishvaropi san. I am the Ishvara of the Bhuta. So here the word Ishvara is very evidently meaning towards this glory and lordship with respect to the other beings and so on. Another shloka from Bhagavad Gita, it says, Bhoktaram yajna tapasa sarvaloka maheshwaram surudam sarvabhutanam jnatva mam shanti mruchati. So again, Bhoktaram yajna tapasa. So the yajna and tapa, okay, which means, so yajna refers to, usually in English it is translated to sacrifice, okay. So the yajna has a very central place in the whole Vedic system, okay. And usually it is visualized as offerings in a sort of to Agni, in a fire, okay. And there are a lot of rules, there is a big system. I mean, there is an entire Veda pretty much dedicated, or it's even more than that. The creation is said to come from yajna performed by Brahma or Prajapati and so on. But who is the enjoyer? Okay, Bhoktaram. Enjoyer. Bhokta can either be someone who enjoys or one who suffers, but one who takes the fruit, right? Experiencing the fruit of it. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So the Maheshwara of all the worlds. Surudam Sarva Bhutanam. So from one point of view, this Maheshwara of all the Bhutas or Ishvara of all the worlds and so on, that can be looked at something distant, right? The Lord as the other. Now the other aspect which Prashant sir had gone into some detail was Antaryami. While he is the Lord and the other, he is also the closest and he is inside. So that one comes beautifully here. It says Surudam Sarva Bhutan. Surud means friend, or friend is sort of the worldly meaning, but Surud also means like the friend of the heart, from the
hearty
heart.
Hearty
friend, right? So Surudam Sarva Bhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantin Vrchati. So one who knows me as this attains Shanti, or sort of the exalted peace. So that is another angle where Ishvara is coming in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita being a poetic text, it won't very academically and systematically expound things like the Sutra and the Bhashya would do. But from a poetic angle, it will bring in several points of view to explain a concept, and it will be spread through the various chapters, right? Whereas the Yoga Sutra and Bhashya is like an academic text which wants to systematize a certain line of thought. So the styles will be very different, and it is very instructive to sort of look at both and learn from both.
Little GK in spiritualism. The word yajna tapasa just now came. Yajna tapasa. Yajna means we immediately imagine some altar, some priest sitting around, and then something offered in that fire. Yajna has a wider meaning. When Krishna he says, I am the receiver, I am the ultimate beneficiary of yajna and tapas. Yajna actually means, one of the other connotations of yajna is any noble deed, selfless act is a yajna. In a selfless act, we always offer something. When we do a noble act, commit a noble act, keep engaged in noble act, accomplish a noble act, there is always some offering. Without offering, there is no noble act. You have to offer your ego, you have to offer your selfishness, you have to offer your pettiness, you have to offer your desires, you have to offer your passions, human tendencies. Unless you offer your human tendencies, you cannot be committing a noble act. So that is the wider meaning of yajna, which you should understand. Don't think Krishna is referring to the fire, altar and offerings and the priests and mantras going on, everything, all that. Yajna tapasa. He is the one who initiates one into yajna and tapas. He is the one who receives whatever is being offered by way of such a noble deed or such a noble austerity. He is the ultimate receiver of it. So that's the meaning of yajna should be understood by students of philosophy, students of religion don't think, otherwise you'll say yajna is out of context today. Yajna is not out of context even extra Hindu societies. Because otherwise we refer yajna to Hindus who have fire worship. No, yajna is there in all kinds of acts and deeds which are noble. That's why in Adhyatma, yajna, dana and tapas. Bhagavad Gita itself says somewhere, how is the man purified? How is the man purified? By yajna, dana and tapas. Nature to offer. And if you look into my book Discourses on Yoga, you will get to know why we must have sense of offering. Basically, why should we have sense of gratitudes? Gratitudes for whom? To nature, to our ancestors, to society, to people, to beings, to the world around us. Usually individual has a lot of conflict with society. An individual has a lot of conflict with society. We tend to ask a question, what has the society done for me? Why should I do for society? Why should I consider society? Society has not done anything for me. This is the usual cry of we commoners. But we should know that society has done a lot for us. Before all of us were born, so many social services, health services were ready for us. The society prepared so many things. There were roads. Most of us, all of us when we were born, the roads were there, the transport was there, communication was there. How do you say that society did nothing for you? You are not born in Siberia. So society has done so much, nature has done so much. Air, water. See, we are put on the lights and fans. Do you know that we are going to get a bill at the end of the month? Do you get the bill from nature? Do you get the bill from sun? Do you get the bill for our air, for what we breathe and live? We don't have any billing for our breathing, no billing for the nature's bounty. So we must have gratitude for nature. Don't consider nature as something inert. After all, it's inert. So we must be indebted to nature. We must be indebted to our ancestors. Whole world believes that we are better than our previous generation, except the wise ones. Otherwise we say we are all far better than our ancestors. And sometimes we think our remote ancestors were aboriginals. Even if they are aboriginals, each generation was getting mounted on their shoulders. And we have got mounted on the shoulders of our immediate previous ancestors. That is why we have whatever intelligence we have, whatever amenities we have, because we had our ancestors. They left us not only materialistic property, they left us intelligence, they left us so many things. So we should have gratitude for our ancestors. So that's why Pancha Yajnas are mentioned, Brahma Yajna, Rushi Yajna, Pitri Yajna, Manusha Yajna, Bhuta Yajna. Pancha Yajnas are mentioned. If you look into that book, you will come to know about it. So Yajna concept should be there for every noble, sincere, honest man. So that's why the word Yajna has come. So this is a kind of general knowledge, GK, in spiritualism. Otherwise, Yajna will say out of context today. The whole world doesn't have Yajna. Other societies don't have Yajnas. We are only fire worshippers. That's not the case. The nobility is sustaining the world. Even scanty noble people in the world actually are sustaining us. This is what the wise people have told us. Who is sustaining you? Not your money, not your material wealth is sustaining the world. It is the few noble people. Even there are few noble people in Kali Yuga, yet they are sustainers. They are sustaining us. That's why I have sense of gratitude, have sense of offering in your act. That's a sublime act. Whenever, whichever act, you see that something is being offered, that will be sublime act. Something has been received or gulped or swallowed by us, it's a scam. If you swallow, it's a scam. If you offer, it's a yajna. So yajna has a wider meaning which you people as students of philosophy and yoga should understand. Because yoga is a basic component of yoga. Foundational aspect, yajna, dana, tapa. Satsanga, sadhana sanga, shastra sanga. Ahar, vihar, achar, vichar. These are basic preliminaries of spiritual seekers. So try to become aware of it. Can you identify it? Do you see that your life is based on that? Yajna, dana, tapa. Ahar, vihar, achar, vichar. Satsanga, sadhana sanga, shastra sanga. So when you adhere to that, anything that you do is yajna. So that's why yajna, dana, yajna and what the other word?
Yajna tapasa.
Yeah, tapasaha. Tapas is an austerity. Austerity is not performed by Tom, Dick and Harry. It requires a lot of restraint. And basically tapas is of the nature of indriya nigraha. That's the best kind of tapas. Sensory restraint is a great merit. And that's why that is being mentioned here. About Ishvara, another etymological meaning, Ishana Shila, Ichha Matrena, Sakala Jagata Uddhara Kshamaha Ishvaraha. By mere desire, if he desires, it will happen. Now look at the case of we mortals. We desire, usually it doesn't happen. Most often it doesn't happen. Being mortals, this is our limitation. If you have desire, usually or certainly it doesn't happen. If it happens, you are lucky. Once in a while it might happen. Whereas if he desires, it will happen. No one can obstruct his desires. That's why another predication comes in Upanishad, it's called Satya Sankalpa. If he says, it's going to happen. If he wishes, it's going to happen. That is his Aishwarya. And now, place ourselves by the side of such Aishwarya. We wish, usually it doesn't happen. We don't wish, it happens. We wish it not to happen, it happens. These are our mortal conditions. That is his condition. By mere desire, Sakala Jagata Uddhara Kshamaha. By mere desire, he can uplift the whole world. By mere desire. That is his Satya Sankalpata. That's his power of the will. What is our power of the will? We have a will, we have obstructions. The moment you will, obstructions start getting around you. They cordon you. The moment you have will, obstructions cordon you. The moment you have wish, they cordon you. Obstructions will cordon you. There is no cordoning for him. So that's why he is Ishvara. Okay.
Yeah, and this Ichha Matrena that he said, if you remember, we saw that when we looked at the commentary of Ishvara Pranidhana. Because there, it says when the yogi, through Pranidhana, when he pleases the Ishvara, Ishvaraha tam anugrannati. So the Ishvara sort of graces him, abhidhyana matrena. So that is similar to Ichha Matrena. Merely by his sankalpa, merely by the thought, abhidhyana matrena yoginam anugrannati.
Another interesting thing comes in Ishwar Rahasya. He just now said, if you please him, he graces. So, a heterodox person questions, that means he is like a politician. Appeasement, you appease, you make him happy, he gives. What is the way he does? It is not like that. You can gratify, you can make me happy, you will get some bounty. You make somebody happy, you will get something like that. It's not that. How will you make him happy? How will you make a man happy, a king happy, a minister happy, a prime minister happy, a president happy? It is not the same way to make him happy. So when do you get his anugraha? If you make him happy. What is it that you should be doing to be happy? You must be noble. You must be having Shat Sampatti, the great 6 qualities. You should be bereft of Shadripus. You should be bereft of 6 defects of human psyche. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Bada, Matsarya. See, otherwise you can make me happy by so many things. You can write down your property. I will be happy. I will bless you. Is that right? So it is not like in case of Ishvara Rahasya that you make him happy by writing down your property or have some appeasement policy, which happens in social structure, appeasement policies, and then you get grace of the prime minister and the president and the ruler and king, etc. So making happy is that. Having noble qualities in you. He doesn't expect anything from you because somewhere he has said, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. He just offer me. What do you have to offer him? Not write down property in his name. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Simple things, even a petal of the flower. You can offer not only flower but petal of the flower. Just a leaf. He doesn't need all those big things for his anugraha, for his grace to be won. So we have to be simple, honest, sattvic, exalted in conduct. That will please him. And then his anugraha is there.
Another very beautiful sloka from the 13th chapter of the Gita, which again gives us what this Ishvara is and how he sort of relates to all the beings. It says, Upadrashta, Anumanta cha, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwaraha, Paramatmeti chapyukto, Paramatmeti cha api yukto. So Paramatmeti chapyukto, Dehe Asmin Purusha Paraha. Okay. So very beautifully this, so the Upadrashta, so Drashta is the seer. So we have seen the Tadadrashtu, Swarupe, Avasthanam, etc. So the Purusha is supposed to be the real seer, even though the Chitta is the instrument of seeing, Purusha is the real seer. Now this is Upadrashta, right? Because he is the Antaryami.
Patanjali says Anupashya, Pratyayanupashya, Anupashya and Upadrashta. Similar words. Upadrashta, Sub-drashta, Anupashya, Anu, secondary, sub. So drashta is Patanjali, in Patanjali's language, Anupashya. And here Anudrashta, Upadrashta. Upadrashta, Anumanta.
Right, so the Drashta is the Purusha, but the Ishvara is the Antaryami for all the Purushas. So he is the Upadrashta, Anumanta cha. So he, in some way, he is the one who agrees and permits. Right? Sanctions.
For your wishes.
And all the conduct, all the activities happens with his permission in some sense. Bharta, the one who nourishes. Bhokta, one who enjoys, suffers, experiences. Maheshwaraha, who is also the greatest Lord. Paramatma, so again, the ultimate, the greatest of the Atmas. Right? So the Atma is, so Atma is Purusha, but you can also say Sharira Atma, Shvasa Atma. So Atma is self in various ways. So the body is also one of the selves. Okay. But usually in the philosophical terms, when we say Atma, we mean the metaphysical self, right? So Paramatma is the sort of the highest or the ultimate of the selves. Dehe asmin, in the body, Purusha Paraha, the highest Purusha. Right? So through, in just one sloka, the various angles in which Ishvara relates to all the beings comes forth in this particular sloka. Then again, he mentioned the Purushottama Yoga, the 15th chapter, right, of the Gita, where now it's going in philosophical terms. So there, when it talks about Purushas, it says there are two types, Dvavimo Purusho Loke, Ksharascha Akshara Evacha, the Kshara Purusha and the Akshara Purusha. Then there is Uttamaha Purushastu Anyaha. So there is one greatest, highest Purusha, Paramatmeti Udarataha, who is referred to as the Paramatma. Yo Lokatrayam Avishya, having entered and pervaded all the worlds. It says here 3 worlds, but all the worlds. Bibharti Avyaya Ishvaraha. So this is again the Ishvara who has entered and pervades everything, and who is Anyaha. It is in sort of the Ekavachanam, in singular. So there is one such Purusha. So there are 2 classes, Kshara and Akshara. So let's say roughly the unliberated and the liberated. But there is one who is different, right? Who is the Paramatma, the Uttama Purusha. And that is being clarified in the 15th chapter there. Then the one he has referred to several times, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Ruddeshe Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudani Mayaya. So he resides in the heart, right, of every being. And he is sort of operating everybody like a machine gets operated, right? So that's another angle through which to understand Ishvara and how he relates to all the beings. And the heart is also interesting, which you have seen in the context of Shraddha. And here also said he resides in the heart. And in the Mundaka Upanishad it says, Pranavam hi Ishvaram Vidyat Sarvasya Hrudaye Sthitam. Okay, so how to understand the Ishvara? He is the Pranava or the Omkara, the Om, who resides in everybody's heart. Okay, so the everybody's heart is also sort of important, because elsewhere in the Gita also it says Samam Sarveshu Bhuteshu Tishtantam Parameshwaram. So Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Tishtati Parameshwaraha. So he resides equally in all beings. Okay, so there is no bias or any such thing, even though he may grace and so on, but his presence in everybody is equal. Okay, so these are the other things about the divinity or the Ishvara that I wanted to cover, which helps us better understand what is being said here. Okay, so maybe we could move on to the 25th sutra, which talks about more about Ishvara. Okay, so the sutra is Tatra Niratishayam Sarvagnya Bijam. Okay, so there, which means in the Ishvara, Niratishayam, unsuperseded, unsurpassed. Okay, what? Sarvagnya Bijam. So the seed of Sarvagnyatvam. Sarvagnya means having knowledge of all. Okay, so that seed of having the complete knowledge, infinite knowledge, which as we'll see is present in everybody, but that is unsurpassed in the Ishvara.
Seed of omniscience. Seed of omniscience. That is Sarvagnya Bijam.
So that resides in everybody, as we'll see, but it is unsurpassed in Ishvara. That is what it says. Tatra Niratishayam Sarvagnya Bijam. So incidentally, and we'll see more of this, look also at the importance of Jnanam and the knowledge being given here throughout. Because when we looked at Ishvarasya Kim Pramanam, Shastram Pramanam, Shastrasya Prakrishta Sattvam Pramanam. So what is the basis of Ishvara? The Shastras. What is the basis of Shastras? The Prakrishta Sattva. We discussed that last time. But again, it is on the basis of knowledge and knowing and the sort of the exalted purity of knowledge and wisdom that Ishvara was getting established. Again, the Ishvara is being characterized through the Sarvajñatvam. Okay, so the omniscience. So more than the power and the glory and the controlling aspects, look how in this treatise here, it is the knowing aspect, the guiding aspect that is being picked up as the one that characterizes the Ishvara or the divinity. Okay. So now let's look at what Vyasa says. Yad idam atita anagata pratyutpanna pratyeka samuchayat atindriya pratyeka samuchayena atindriya grahanam alpam bahu iti sarvagnya bijam etadhi vardhamanam yatra niratishayam sa sarvagnyah. Okay. So the knowledge of what has happened and what is yet to come, okay, which that collection of knowledge, the seed of that, which is atindriya, which means it is not to be gained through the senses, okay, so it is sort of it is beyond the senses. So that knowledge which exists in everybody, but which can be very less or very large in proportion, the ability to have that knowledge, that is the Sarvagnya Bijam. Okay? The seed that bestows this kind of knowledge, which is beyond simple sensory knowledge, which is present in everyone in different proportions. That Vardhamanam means as it grows. I mean, you can conceptualize it as less and more and ever increasing. The point where it reaches, where, I mean, it doesn't reach, but it is where it cannot be surpassed because it is infinite, right? That is the Sarvagnyatvam. He is Sarvagnyaha where it happens. Okay, so that is the explanation of Sarvagnya Bijam.
So what is omniscience? What is all-knowing? One who knows the past, the present and future. When do you say somebody is omniscient? It is one thing that he knows about the whole past, whole future. Somebody tells you your past and tells your future, you will say this is all-knowing person. Secondly, atindriya, what you cannot be seeing through senses. Very subtle, very remote, very distant, which cannot be seen by us. But the omniscience lies in it. If somebody is able to see what no one can see, that's omniscience. You say he is an omniscient person. Now you do not know your past and you do not know your future. Somebody is able to tell you about your past and somebody is able to tell about your future. You say he is omniscient person. So what is omniscience? What is all-knowing? Encyclopedia is not omniscient book. It contains all the various subjects. However, it is not omniscient book. And by knowing that, you won't become omniscient even. If you by heart the whole Encyclopedia Britannica, 22 volumes or whatever, know by heart, you won't become omniscient, because you should know the past and you should know the future. You should know, you should be able to see, which is atindriya, extrasensory. So that is omniscience. Now suppose I am able to read your past and future, etc., and you say Prashant is really omniscient. But there is somebody is more omniscient than me. There can be someone more omniscient than me. He can be knowing much more than I know. What I know, you say, so it's a very relative term. When you say somebody is Sarvagnya, it's a relative term. Somebody extraordinary wise man, you say he is all-knowing, he is omniscient. But then there can be someone who knows better than him. Then we will say more omniscient, more and more omniscient. It sounds logic. Is that right? So this is possible, that somebody knows more than him, somebody knows more than that person, somebody knows more and more and more than that person. It goes on ad infinitum. That is why he comes to the concept of bijam. The seed of omniscience. If the seed of omniscience is exalted, prakrushta, utkrishta bijam. If the seed is excellent, naturally the output will be better than that. Better, is that correspondingly, is that right? So suppose I have got a seed of knowledge, and you will say he is omniscient. He has a better seed, then he is better than me. And the seed can go on evolving. So here he says it reaches the bijam, the seed of omniscience. He doesn't say omniscience. He said seed of omniscience, because seed of omniscience gives omniscience. So the seed of omniscience reaches unexceedability. Parakashtha, kashtha prapti. It cannot, nothing can be better than that. It is the best all times. It is the best all times. So Niratisha Sarvagnya, the Sarvagnya Bijam reaches unexceedability, Niratishayatvam, Satishayatvam, Niratishayatvam. If it can evolve, it is Satishayatva. If it cannot be going beyond what is called as Kashtha Prapti, Parakashtha, supreme, the unexceedability, that is Niratishayam. So the seed of omniscience in divinity reaches unexceedability, rather than we commoners saying God is omniscient. You see, we commoners will just say the God is omniscient. Is that right? He is all knower. Sarvagnya, Sarvavid. He knows everything, he can know everything. He knows everything, he can know everything. This is our common man's definition of God's omniscience. This doesn't stand the test of philosophical postulation. Therefore, he has such a roundabout way of explaining, rather than saying God is omniscience or omniscience of God is unexceedable. He says the seed of omniscience in divinity is unexceedable. This is the precise, perfect statement. So the philosophical system takes recourse to forensic language, not common man's parlance. See, I and he can enter into agreement and we agree to be in a joint venture, but that's not sufficient. We go to an attorney and then we get it documented in a forensic language so that all the interests are preserved, maintained and secured. If we just enter with our own will and we say we'll agree to be in a business, implications can come out later. That's why we go to attorneys and get it done in a forensic language. So in philosophy they take recourse to forensic language. So there are no loopholes, no lacunas. So that's why Tatra Niratisha Sarvagna Bijam, seed of omniscience reaches unexceedability. Therefore the omniscience also reaches unexceedability in divinity. That's why a roundabout way of defining, to be precise. Another example, why Patanjali has defined so many things in a roundabout way. We saw the sutra of Nidra. Abhava pratyaya lambana vrittihi nidra. The chitta, when taking recourse to cause of absence, is state of sleep. Now this definition is such that if you think over it, you will lose the sleep. But it has to be defined that way. To be defining the sleep in that way is only the way where, although you might lose the sleep on understanding the definition, but that will be the precise way of defining. That's how philosophical system take recourse to such things. Okay.
And just as we go forward, what we can see is nothing is taken as given, nothing is taken as granted. Everything is questioned, and then the commentator has to sort of take pains to explain why it is so. Right? So the next thing he says, so why is there a kashtha prapti? How can you say there is the kashtha prapti? How can you say there is a supremum, the unexceedability? So he says, asti kashtha prapti sarvagnya bijasya. So this particular sarvagnya bija, it has this kind of unsurpassable point. Why? Because satishayatvat parimanavat iti. Because it is like a quantity, it is like an amount. with a sort of a ordering. There is a greater than, smaller than relation. Okay, satishayatvat. And therefore, there is a kashta prapti. Okay, it's almost like a mathematical argument. Then you say, because it can be compared, there is a greater than, smaller than, therefore there is a point which cannot be exceeded. So, yatra kashta prapti jnanasya, where this jnana gets this kashta prapti, the limiting nothing which cannot be exceeded, saha sarvajnaha, he is the sarvajna. Okay, so again, and sacha purusha vishesha iti, and he is the purusha vishesha. Okay, so again, it is coming to where, how to characterize that one single individual purusha. The same thing is being brought out, where this sarvajna bijam, this jnana, reaches the highest, okay, the answer possible. That is the sarvajna, and that is the purusha vishesha. That is what is being said.
See again, he is not a super brain, omniscience. The God is not super brain to say he knows everything, he can know everything. Again, Ishwar Rahasya, how is it that he is Sarvagna? How is it possible? Does he have a brain that is 1,000 folds or 1,000,000 folds than human brain? No. The mysticism, the Rahasya is that, see, I do not know what he has the knowledge, all that he has as knowledge. He doesn't know all that I know. I do not know all that you know. You do not know all that somebody else knows. But how is it, what is his trick to become Sarvagnya? How does he have this omniscience? I know what I know. He being my indweller, he knows what I know. He knows what he knows. Divinity being his indweller, divinity knows what he knows. So collectively all that we know is his knowledge. Collectively all that we know and all the people retrospectively knew and all that people prospectively will be knowing will be known to him because he is going to be indweller, he was the indweller, he is the indweller of all the beings. So our knowledge, collective knowledge, is one of his particles of knowledge. All that you know, all of you know, he knows because he is the indweller, your indweller. And that is his trick to become omniscient. Don't think he started studying very hard, putting lots of hours, going to all universities in the world, going to all masters in the world, gather knowledge from them. That's not the way. His trick to become omniscient, that he became indweller of every being. Even what the cat and what mosquitoes and what bacteria knowledge they have became his knowledge. Because he is indweller of all the living beings. So not only collective knowledge of all human beings is his knowledge, all collective knowledge of all the beings of all the times is his knowledge. That's the way he is omniscient. Even the particles, inert matter, he is indweller. So what the dust particle knows is his knowledge. We think dust particle knows nothing. That is our ignorance. What the dust particle knows is only known to dust particle. It will not be known to you. But he is indweller of the dust particle, therefore whatever is the knowledge of dust particle is also his knowledge. That is his way, that is his trick, that is the rahasya, that's the mysticism, how he is omniscient. Because of Sarvantaryami. Everybody's knowledge is his knowledge. Now he is a software engineer, I am totally illiterate in his realm. But his indweller being him, he knows the entire software engineering or whatever he knows, he is indweller for all software engineers, therefore he knows all the knowledge of all the software engineers in the world. That is his trick of becoming omniscient. That's how he is omniscient. Don't think he's a super brain like supercomputers. That's his rahasya, simple trick. get into all particles in the universe, be the indweller of all particles. If you remain in me, you will know me. If you indwell me, you will know me. So he indwells all beings, and that's the way he becomes that unexceedable omniscience will be there, because he is indweller of, he is Sarvantaryami. So again, this is the word that you have to look into, the rahasya, the mystic meaning of Sarvantaryami, Antaryami, Sarvantaryami. Don't think he went to Cambridge and Oxford and Stanford and Harvard and all the universities from Nalanda to Harvard. He went to all universities and gathered the knowledge everywhere and became omniscient. That's not the way. He has been indweller of all those people who have ceased to exist now. They were in past, now they are not existing. He was indweller, so he had their knowledge. So he knew what Einstein knew because he was Einstein's indweller. He knew Archimedes because Archimedes knew because he was indweller of Archimedes. Aristotle, name anyone, Buddha, anyone, you and me and anyone, everyone. He doesn't discriminate. I will not be within him, I won't enter him, I will just enter this special person, not that ordinary person. Nothing like that. He is indweller of everyone. That is how the seed of omniscience reaches inexceedability. Otherwise, there is no way that one can reach that point of unexceedability. Being Sarvantaryami, he can reach that. Parakashtha, kashtha prapti. Okay. If it is good for you, thank you. If it is a waste of time, sorry.
Yeah, so in the 13th chapter, there is this, I was reminded. So he says, Krishna says, Kshetrajñaschapi mam viddhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. So, kshetra, in that chapter it says the body is like a kshetra. Kshetra is translated as a field, even though that translation is not, I mean, I think there needs to be a better word, but I don't know what is the word. So the kshetra is in some sense the field. And he says, Kshetrajña is the Purusha, the individual Purusha, but I am the Kshetrajña in Sarva Kshetreshu, in all the fields. So that is what he was illustrating. And again, as a clarification, so as to be not taken very literally, it is not like the knowledge of the Lord is the sum of the knowledge of all the beings. Okay, it is much more and inexceedable. It is not to be taken too literally, saying. And
it is his knowledge plus collective knowledge.
Right. And it is also about Atita Anagata. So it is as though like 10,000 years ago he had less knowledge because the sum of all the knowledge was less. So that's not how it was, right? So the time doesn't play a factor. Okay. So now Vyasa slightly switches gears, and now he's talking about how to understand this issue. So what is the means? So we have seen the pramanas, right? Pratyaksha, Anumana. So he says, Samanya matropa samvare cha krutopakshayam anumanam na vishesha pratipattau samarthamiti. So anumanam, which is roughly speaking reasoning. As we have seen, it is about a samanya. It is about something, about a class of objects. It is not about individual objects, right? So when you say, oh, there is smoke, so there is fire, we don't know the exact, necessarily the shape of the fire, the color of the fire. Or we say, okay, it has 2 horns and so on, so it must be a cow. So we don't know exactly which cow and etc. Right? So it is a samanya. It is a common knowledge across a class of objects. To see an individual object, to know about an individual object, you need pramana. Okay? Oh, sorry, you need pratyaksha. Because that is the specific, that individual, how it is, when you look at it, you know. Right? But in the case of Ishvara, he is saying you cannot rely on anuma or reasoning because it cannot be about a vishesha. And there is only one Ishvara. So it is not a class of objects that we are talking about. So then how to understand? So tasya sangyadi vichesha pratipattihi agamataha paryanveshya. So how are you supposed to research? Okay, anveshanam is research or finding out. by Agamataha. So Agamas, okay. So Agama includes all Shastras, Arshamatam, everything that has come through the original source. Apta Purushasya Vachanam, right? So somebody who has had a revelation, as he is describing. So that is the Agamas, the whole corpus of Vedas, Upanishads, Agamas and so on. That is the means to do any research or finding out more about the Ishvara. So that is what Vyasa is saying. So now, I'll just mention one again beautiful sloka from something called a Vakyapadiyam, which talks about Agama. Okay. So it says Avirbhuta Prakashanam Anupapluta Chetasam Atitam Anagatam Jnanam Pratyakshana Vishishyate. So somebody Avirbhuta Prakashanam, with an exalted intelligence, right? Who is the Apta Purusha, who has a pure chitta, who has knowledge revealed to him. His past, present, future knowledge, that which is Agama, which is a revelation, Pratyakshana Vishishyate. It is not any different from Pratyaksha. Okay? So the Agama or the revelation as attained by the original knower, the one to which it is revealed. His knowledge is no different from Pratyaksha, which we directly see. It is as though that person is directly seeing. So it is, you can give as much confidence, or it is as much with proof as though the object is right in front of you. So that is being said. So it is often, it's also called Alaukika Pratyaksha. So Laukika Pratyaksha means worldly sensory knowledge, seeing, hearing and all of that. Alaukika Pratyaksha is beyond the worldly knowledge. And here it is clearly saying that Agama Pratyakshana Vishishyate. It is not different from Pratyaksha. And since Vyasa said this about Anumanam, the Anumanam is not to be relied upon. In this case, to finding more about Agama is the way to take. Again, another verse from Vakyapadiyam that says, Hastasparsha Ivandhena Vishame Pathi Dhavata Anumana Pradhanena Vinipatona Durlabhaha. Again, a beautiful analogy here. So let's say a blind person walking on a crooked road, touching by the hands and one running, not even walking, running on a sort of crooked and a bad road. That is similar to how Anumana Pradhanena, through Anumanam itself trying to find the truth. Okay, Vinipatona Durlabhaha, he is going to invariably fall. Okay, that's what the Vakyapadiyam is saying. And therefore they are saying Agama is the way, the approach to take to research and find out more about these topics. Okay, that is what is being said. Okay. So now the next question, why is this Ishvara, what does he do? Right, in some sense. So he says, Tasyatma Atmanugraha Bhavepi. Okay, so he has no Atma Anugraha. There is nothing for him to do for himself, the Ishvara. Right? Bhuta Anugraha. So the grace for others, for all the beings. Prayojanam as the purpose or the utility, usefulness. So the Ishvara's usefulness is not for himself, but it is for Bhutanugraha, for the whole set of beings, gracing them. Jnana Dharmopadeshena. So again, look at the importance of Jnana and Dharma given here. So his guidance through Jnana and Dharma. Kalpa Pralaya Mahapralayeshu. So now if you look at the time scale of the Indian system, which we had seen some time back actually. So there is this, I talked about sort of a day of Indra, day of Brahma, and so then there is Pralaya, then the creation comes again and so on. So the 4 yugas, if you remember. So Kalpa Pralaya Mahapralayeshu Samsarinaha Purushan Uddharishyami iti. So it is as though Ishvara is saying, in all these Pralaya and Kalpa Pralaya, Mahapralaya and so on, through Jnana, through guidance, Upadesha about Jnana and Dharma, I will elevate, okay, all the Purushas who are in the Samskaras. That is Samsara. That is his Prayojanam. So that is his sort of the role and purpose or the utility. So there is nothing for him to do for himself. Okay, and that is what his role is. Okay. Again, there is this sloka in the Vishnu Sahasranama, right, which says yatas sarvani bhutani bhavantyadi yugagame yasminscha pralayam yanti punareva yugakshaye. So all the bhutas, which is what is bhutanugraha is talking about, from whom they all emerge, okay, when yugagame, and where they all go, yasminscha pralayam yanti, when the yuga is over during the pralaya. And that is, in that case it is about Vishnu, it is a Vishnu Sahasranama. And here it is saying that is the sort of the prayojanam of the Ishvara. Right? So all these sort of the sayings from the various texts, they all sort of converge if you think about it through different points of view, how they are saying. Okay, so, and then lastly, there is an example given here where just to illustrate how one great entity can do anugrah, can grace another. It says, Adi Vidwan Nirmana Chittam Adhisthaya. So this Nirmana Chittam is something we'll probably see later, right? So we have seen that Chitta and Purusha is Anadi Sambandha, they are eternally related. Nirmana Chitta is when someone creates a Chitta, okay, which is probably similar to Prakritim Swam Adhisthaya, how the Ishvara is also coming. So the Nirmana Chittam Adhisthaya Karunyat. Karunya means like through compassion, okay. Bhagavan Paramarshi Asuraye. So Asurihi is one sort of ancient acharya of the Sankhya. So here it is an example of how Kapila Muni through Nirmana Chitta for the Jignasa. Jignasa means Jnatum Ichha. It is the wish to understand, wish to learn. For that, the Kapila through a Nirmana Chitta, sort of, or the Bhagavan through compassion, by creating a person, gave his Upadesha, Jnana Dharma Upadesha about the Sankhya system to Asurihi, through which that tradition or parampara has started. Why was it done? So because of his Jignasa, the thirst for knowledge, the desire for knowledge. Tantram Pravoche, the Sankhya system was Sankhya system was expounded for him. Right? So that is an example how for the prayojanam of the Ishvara for all the bhutas, this is an example given how it is done by Jnana Dharma Upadesha.
See, the all qualities of Ishvara reach unexceedability. His power, unexceedable. Strength, unexceedable. Knowledge, unexceedable. Glory, unexceedable. Niriteshyatvam is there in every aspect of his Aishwarya. All the glories reach that. Now, why does he have his Aishwarya? See, why are you rich or why am I rich? I want to be rich for myself. You want to be rich for yourself. Why do I have power and strength? You have your power and strength for yourself. I have my power and strength for myself. Whereas in his case, all that enormous Aishwarya, why does he amass unexceedable Aishwarya, unexceedable glory, power, strength, valor, knowledge, etc., etc.? It is for others. If he has glories, the glories are for others, not for himself. Because otherwise we want to have glories for ourselves. Because we have happiness to have glories with ourselves. He has glories for others. And that he makes it clear here, that his glory is for others, and that's why his Jnana, Sarvajnatva, his all-knowership, all-knowingship, omniscience is for him to uplift the mortals who are in mundane mire, life after life after life, creation after creation after creation. So to uplift them, he has all those glories. And that's why he manifests in the form of Kapila to give wisdom. If you see in Bhagavad Purana, there are 24 avatars, incarnations. We all know Dashavtaras, 10 incarnations of Vishnu. But the Bhagavad Purana speaks of 24. And one of the 24 is Kapila. Kapila is to give wisdom to the world. There's also quotation in Shvetashvatara Upanishad that at the beginning of every creation, a wise person comes up. With reference to Vedas, somewhere I have said, what are these Vedas? Many of them say Vedas came later, 1500 BC, 2000 BC. They allocate time to Vedas. It's not true, it's not proper, it's wrong. When the Creator creates a creation, along with creation, He gives a manual. Suppose I manufacture a car, I manufacture a machine, I must bring the manual along with the car. I can't say car will come out today and manual will come after 10 years. Along with my product, I have to give a manual. It must come along with the product. There is no point in having a manual before the product comes and after the product has come. It must come along with it. Not 10 years before, not 10 years after. So, that's what Vedas are. When He creates, along with creation, the Vedas come. It's a manual of creation. It tells you what this creation is, what to do with this creation, what will this creation do, for what it is there, for what it should be used, how it should be used. So Vedas are manual of creation. And along with creation, He brings out Vedas. And also, along with creation, He brings out knowers of Vedas. We have concept of Saptarshis. In every creation, the Saptarshis are born along with creation. They know the Vedas and they come and start giving wisdom about the Vedas. They tell about the Vedas. So Kapila, he was one. Kapila avatar means knowledge of, the personification of knowledge. So with the very creation, a Kapila is also born. That is, divinity manifests in the form of Kapila to give wisdom. And every start of creation, there are Vedas and there is a Kapila. Kapila is an avatar of Ishvara, who has all the knowledge. So the Vedas, as well as knower of Vedas, come along with creation. Not after some time the creation has taken place. So that is how he comes, and it is all his knowledge is for others, to uplift the people through such Kapila avatars, Kapila Munis. Through them the wisdom has been transmitted to us from the ages. So that's how all his glory is for Para Anugraha. He doesn't have to do anything for him. Whereas our case is we need a lot to do for ourselves. This is the condition of mortals. We need to do a lot endlessly for ourselves. He has nothing to do for himself. He is totally accomplished. His glory is not for himself. If I wear a chain of half a kilo, 1 kilo, it is my chain. My chain is not for you and everyone here, but whatever is his glory, every particle is meant for others, not for himself. He doesn't need it. That's why he has all that glory. So if you want to become rich, one of the ways is, Asteya Sutra gives a clue to this. Don't have any aspiration. Wealth will come at your feet. If you aspire for wealth, the wealth will get away from you. This is the law of mortal world of human beings. The moment you say, I want, you don't get it. I don't want, it becomes parasite. It doesn't leave you. I don't want sorrow. It will clinch on you. It will clinch to you. It will never leave you. I want happiness. It goes away light years away from you. So say, I don't want anything. Glory will come around at your feet. Jnana, Vairagya, if you have recalled the sutras, there are two sides of the same coin. If he has Jnana reaching Parakashta, Vairagya has reached Parakashta. And that's why all glory comes at his feet. He has all the glories because he doesn't want any glory. And whatever glory he has, he wants it to be given to others. He wants to share it. And that's what he says, his Jnana glory. Glory in the form of Jnana is to be given.
Yeah. And in the context of this sutra and commentary, Niratishayam Sarvagna Bijam, and Prayojanam that we saw to uplift all the beings, there is this another mantra from the Mundakopanishad that says, Yaha Sarvagnya Sarvavit Yasya Jnanamayam Tapaha Tasmad Etad Brahma Nama Rupam Annam Cha Jayate. So he, which is referring to the sort of the Lord of Ishvara, he is a Sarvagnya and Sarvavit, one who knows all, omniscient. Yasya Jnanamayam Tapaha. So that's also very interesting. So his tapas is full of knowledge, right? Jnanamayam Tapaha. From him has this creation, name and form and food and everything has come forth. So that is what it is. And of course the famous lines from Bhagavad Gita about which says Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bharata Abhyuttanam Dharmasya Tadmanam Srijamyaham. So again there is some relevance to Prakritim Swamadhisthaya or even Nirmana Chittam. So he's saying the Prayojanam of the Ishvara is for Upadesha, guidance on Dharma and Jnana. And that is what in the Gita it is saying, whenever the Dharma goes down, right? That's when I come. For what? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya. So by sort of to establish dharma, by uplifting the sort of the pure people and so on, sambhavami yuge yuge, I come again and again in the various yugas. So that again links very well to what is being said here by Vyasa in terms of the prayojanam of Ishvara, that it is not for himself, but it is for the uplifting of beings. So that's what it is. Okay, so we'll stop here. We've finished 1.25. We'll continue next time. So we'll chant the slokas on Guruji. Maybe one or two questions today. Vaijnānika shikshakatve kalākāra āsaneshu yaha yogābhyāse ca tattvajñas tam vande sundaram gurum yoga vriksho lokesmin vardhito yasya preranaya योगाचार्याय गुरवे सुंदराय नमो नमः. So any questions?
मराठीत विचारते प्रश्न. ईश्वराला जाणणं म्हणजे अशक्यच असलं पाहिजे, कारण ईश्वराला पूर्णत्वाने जाणणं म्हणजेच मीच ईश्वरच असली पाहिजे. बिकॉज इट्स अ बीज, निरतिशय सर्वज्ञ बीजम.
See, even if somebody is God-realized person, you will not know the God totally, completely, in toto, because of the infinitude. Never ever there is a chance that somebody will know the God totally, wholly, completely, inside out, outside in. In that case, the God will become limited. There is infinitude to every aspect of his. Therefore, even a God-realized person doesn't know the God totally, will not know the God totally. And therefore, by knowing the God, you will not be able to inculcate the seed of omniscience, which was her question. If the God has seed of omniscience, by knowing the God, I should get also that seed in me. It's not possible. So the point is, the God cannot be totally, absolutely realized for any mortal. Manada, you get very good example in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita where there is Vishwarupa Darshana, where God, the God was prepared to make a display of his cosmic form. Arjuna could, despite the Divya Chakshu, despite the glorious sight that he got, yet he could not put up with it. He could not withstand. He said, enough, 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 enough. Your form is endless. I am not able to withstand this form of yours. So that's a testimony. When the Lord himself blessed Arjuna with a sight, special sight, and he said, now you can have sight of my endless form. He could not put up with it. So, by knowing the divinity, it will not mean that the seed of omniscience is also inculcated by one. That is totally for him. Ekam Dvitiya is another description of God. No one will be equal to him. Even if you are realized, even if you have attained the supreme spiritual samambonam, moksha, nirvana, you will not be equal to him. You can never become equal to him, because he is infinite, endless. So Brahmagnya will not become Brahma, is that one of the precepts of monism, Advaita Vedanta. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati is what they pick up the scriptural statement. But that's not in toto. He doesn't become him. Because even in Brahma Sutras there is a sutra which says, yes, he gets all powers of Brahma, but not one power. Jagad Vyapara Varja. Jagad Vyapara Varja. He doesn't become master of universe. Otherwise he is almost equal to him. But except for one aspect. That means he is not equal. He cannot become equal. So omniscience cannot be inculcated by knowing the divinity, because he is the seed of omniscience, he has the seed of omniscience. By realizing him, you will not get the seed in you. Okay?
So we say that God is indweller, he is inside us. So that seed of omniscience in that small aspect is also within us, right?
Within us. Yes, it is we. But then we have something in us that cannot belong to you. It is in you. All that is in you, you don't even want to possess it. And it will not be your ownership. All that is within you, because this embodiment is given on lease for us. This body is not yours. This mind is not yours. It is given on lease. It will be taken away without notice any time. There will be no 2 months notice and 3 months notice that you will have to leave this world. Without notice we get this world. So we don't have ownership on what we consider as ours. It is in you aspect. Divinity is in you. That it's not yours. So therefore that omniscience which is there in divinity who is in you doesn't become your omniscience. See, you don't want to even possess what you have in your body. If there is a bacteria in your body, you want to get rid of it. It is in you. But you immediately take antibiotics and you want to see that it is out. In you, you want it to be out. So we are made up of I, me, mine, in me aspects. The in me is certainly not yours.
मला यज्ञाबद्दल विचारायचं होतं. तर 4थ्या चॅप्टरमध्ये द्रव्ययज्ञ, तपोयज्ञ, योगयज्ञ तथा परे स्वाध्याय ज्ञानयज्ञाचं यतया संचितर्पता, याच्यामध्ये योगयज्ञ याच्याबद्दल जर विचारायचं होतं.
Translate. I'll just translate the question because it was in Marathi. So he quoted a verse where different types of yajnas were being mentioned. He wants to know more about yoga yajna.
As I said, yajna is any noble deed, any noble act. Unless there is a noble act, selfless act, it will not be yajna. And for yajna you don't require altar, fire, mantras, priests, etc., etc. It should be just a selfless act. Now yoga yajna, yoga is yajna because in yoga, while you are doing yoga, what is being offered is the vrittis of Shadripus. That's why after a good session of yoga, you feel purity, piety, sanctity, etc. Because you have offered something. What have you offered? Absence of vairagya, absence of knowledge, absence of jnana has been offered. Shadripus have been offered. Selfishness has been offered. In yoga, most importantly, you offer your selfishness, pettiness. That is the yoga yajna. Unless that is there, yoga will not actualize. The aham must be offered. If you are not offering your I-ness, it is not yoga. So in yoga yajna, you offer your I-ness. So there various yajnas are mentioned. Dravya yajna is the yajna where in a materialistic form of yajna you have to offer some materialistic aspects in the yajna for materialistic reaps. So there are various kinds of yajnas, but they are all noble acts, noble deeds. That's why Bhagavad Gita lists various yajnas where you don't require that formal kind of fire, altar and the various components of that yajna as a worship form. One of the Bhagavad Gita verses, aham kratura aham yajna swadaham aham ushadam mantro aham evajaham aham agni aham hutam. All the components of yajna are mentioned in that verse. Aham kratur aham kratur aham yajna swada aushadhi. So these are all the components which are offered in a fire. So you need mantras, you need basically a resolution. You must resolve that I will be performing this yajna, sankalpa. So all these things are components of yajna which the verse in Bhagavad Gita mentions. That is the kind of ritualistic yajna. But it's a symbol of the concept of yajna. Don't say today no one performs yajnas are outdated. It's not that. That's why all the various yajnas are mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Even if you don't have that formal kind of yajna, some yajna is going on. The whole creation is on yajna. There's beautiful Panchagni Vidya which comes in Upanishads. The sun offers the heat into the ocean. The ocean offers the vapor into the space. Vapor makes an offer into clouds. Clouds make an offer in the form of rains. Rains offer in the form of crops. Crops offer in the form of food. The food is offered into your belly, and then it is offered in the form of semen, and the semen gives birth to another life. The food finally becomes seminal matter or over matter for new life to be born. So that's how we are in the cycle. Understand the larger cycle described in Panchagni Vidya of Chandogya Upanishad. So there are panchahutis, 5 ahutis are given. The 5 ahutis are mentioned there. Because of these 5 ahutis, we have come into existence. Because of the 5 ahutis, the generations after us will come into existence. If the ocean is gone, the sun is gone, life is on end of the life. So the sun is offering, ocean is offering. So it's a cycle of mutual offering. In the yoga, apane yuyhati pranam pranapane tatha pare, Bhagavad Gita. You are breathing, apana is offered into prana, inhalation is apana into prana, exhalation is prana into apana. This offering is continuously going on. Watch your breath. Inhalations, exhalations, inhalation into prana, apana into prana, prana into apana, apana into prana, apana into prana, apana. So this is apanic zone, this is pranic zone. This is your in breath, this is your out breath. This is your in breath, that's your out breath. So this wheel of offerings is continuing. For us to live, there is a yajna going on. If this yajna stops, you cease to exist. The whole creation is sustained. Whole creation is sustained by yajna. The breath itself is a yajna. Your thought process is a yajna. Like there is input and there is output. Something comes in, something comes out. So the cycle is going on. So try to understand the yajna principle in a broader sense. Then you will realize everything is yajna. Yajna is the cause of all creation. Yajna is cause of all sustenance. Yajna is the cause of all destructions. Huh? Sun?
What does he get back?
Sun gets back. Sun, that's why Bhagavad Gita again, there is a quotation. What is a good life? You must appease the divinities, divinities will keep appeasing you, and you must mutually appease each other, and that will keep the creation going. Satisfy the gods will satisfy you. You satisfy the God will satisfy you. Then keep up this cycle of you satisfying and they satisfying.
Deva.
Though Aditya, the Surya is a Devata, and therefore there are offerings. In what meager way can you offer to the sun? Gayatri. You know Surya Namaskars. So somebody is praying the divinity, so the sun is being appeased, sun is receiving. Sun is receiving the grace from divinity, and therefore the sun is emitting the rays for you and me. So he is getting from somewhere for him to be giving us. The sun is giver for everything. He is a giver for us for everything here. Sun is giver of everything for us. There is also a giver for sun. Sun receives from someone and sun gives you. And that's why we have concept of let us give something meagerly to the sun. Therefore there is early morning ardhya given, Surya Upasana, Gayatri Mantra, and just doing something for gods. If you give to gods, it will go to all classes of gods. Vasu, Rudra, Aditya. That's the aspect of pantheon. And that is not yet in your syllabus. As and when it comes in your syllabus, we'll tell you about it. The pantheon. Vasu, Rudra, Aditya. Any deity, you can worship Rama, it goes to Surya. You worship Hanuman, it goes to Surya. Because they are all one class of divinity, which is having 3 subdivisions called Vasu, Rudra, Aditya. So the sun is receiving. Now the ocean is offering the vapor. So that's an offering to the sun. It goes up to the sun, and the sun rays come down on the ocean. Vapor goes up, rays come down. So it is all yajna in place. Give and take is there. It's all cyclic. Yeah, that's a starting point. That's a portal for us to commence a noble kind of life, have little environment consciousness. So that will be a portal. It's a gateway. That's not be all and end all. That will not be sufficient. We will have to go a long way. We have taken a first step to develop this awareness. That's only a very first step, a baby step, baby foot that we have put. We have got to go a long way. Because again, this environmentology is again for pettiness, selfishness. This creation should be preserved. I want to have trees because I want to live. Again, is a selfish motive behind it. It's not philosophy. It's not philosophical concept yet. Do you follow? I want to live, therefore I want the lungs intact outside me. If the lungs outside me are intact, then I will be able to have my lungs functioning. So again, there is a selfishness. So it's only first step that we have taken in awareness and consciousness. It should not be belittled. The first step is always important. Long way to go.
Okay, I think we'll take one more. Next time? Or?
Okay, one more.
One more. Okay.
Mostly I act like an omniscient, at least when I talk to my siblings. However, they backfire stating that I don't know anything. So why does that happen? Especially when I know that I'm right and I have the knowledge. Because even I'm an encyclopedia, right? So why does that happen?
See, these are all gravities of the mortal world. You'll have to put up with it. That's why it is called samsara, prapancha. So these are all the things in very prapancha. The good ones will suffer, the bad ones will enjoy. These are all gravities are working on us. The ultimate realities are not that. Ultimate realities are hard to be cited by us rather than considering one's own conditions. If you are being repaid in a bad way by someone, you should know that you have repaid someone bad way in earlier lives. We get what we did, we get what we gave. So suppose you think I am deprived, I am being tortured, harassed. You harass someone in your previous incarnations and it is being repaid. So there should not be any grudge, and this is the way of world. This is what is going to happen in this world of mortality, this world of Maya. That's why this called is Maya. Samsara is Maya, Prapancha is Maya. You cannot get away from this. So you might say that I really deserve respects and I don't get it. I deserve this and that, I don't get it. Because we deprived someone who was deserving, and that's now being repaid to us. So this is the way of the world. There is no solution for it as long as this. That's why he wants to uplift from the Maya or the Maya. Maya of the prapancha. Again, this word prapancha. You know what is this word prapancha? Prapancha. A prefix for exaltation. Pancha. What is pancha? What five? Mahabhutas. What are Mahabhutas? Great ghosts. So we are being permeated, subsumed, engulfed by the great ghosts. What are ghosts? The ghost does something we cannot see. We cannot be seeing a ghost, but the ghost does so many things. That's why it is called ghost or bhuta. So this is a world of Pancha Mahabhutas, great ghosts are playing havoc. This is the plane for them to play havoc. All sorts of things, untoward things are going to happen in this world. That's why it is called prapancha. The samsara is prapancha. We use the word, we do not know the meaning. Prapancha म्हणजे हे 5 महाभूतांचा धिंगाणा. The havoc. That's why it is called prapancha. So that's why we want to get rid of this salvation, emancipation from prapancha. We want to get rid of the havoc of the bhutas. And that's why we look for transcendence.
Okay. So,
Okay.
yeah. So thank you.